Hello everybody and welcome back to another 2022 roster breakdown video. Today we are taking a look at the roster for the Seoul Dynasty. The first of the teams that we are going to talk about that did not make the playoffs in 2021. The Seoul Dynasty finished 7th overall in the standings. Finished with a Countdown Cup appearance, though they didn't win any games during the tournament. And they missed out on the playoffs as the play-in team. So the Seoul Dynasty had a pretty rocky season. Very good season, of course, in 2020, where they managed to make it to the grand finals. But they were not able to go the distance in 2021. And as a result, they made some pretty big changes to their coaching staff and their roster. So let's talk about that. Taking a look at their roster, the DPS lineup is Fitz, Prophet, and Stalker. We know Prophet's great DPS duo with those two, adding Stalker in, of course, to round that out. In the support line, they have Creative, Jonak, and the rookie Vindame, and in their tank line, they have Smurf. So I don't believe this roster is finished. I believe they're going to have another tank player. Maybe they won't. Maybe they're going to roll with just Smurf. Maybe they believe Smurf can play everything. But I would say chances are high that they are going to be looking to add another tank player. Though who we'll see over time who that is. So let's talk first about their DPS line. That is the best part of this roster. Easily, I think this is the kind of thing that most people are very excited for. Of course, you have Prophet, the 2018 Grand Finals MVP, 2018 champion with the London Spitfire, Grand Finals appearance with the Seoul Dynasty. So very good career in both the Overwatch League and even prior to the Overwatch League in Apex. For Prophet, one of the most legendary players in all of Overwatch League history, all of Overwatch history. One of the greatest to ever play. He is, of course, the primary flex DPS player for this team. So he's going to be the guy that plays their Tracer, that plays a lot of the Genji, the Hanzo, Pharah. He even plays some Ashe. He's very, very flexible. He plays pretty much everything. There's very few situations where I would say you want to sub Prophet out. And you pair him with Fitz, who we have seen do very, very well on the hit scan role. His Widow, his Cassidy. Even plays some Hanzo. Plays a lot of the Sombra for this team. This duo is a very prolific duo when it comes to those kind of Tracer Sombra type of compositions. Which is where I think they really have excelled a lot in the past. So we know these two are very, very good. We know these are two really good players. They're top-level players. They are, in my opinion, the best part of this team over the past 2 seasons were these two, Prophet and Fitz. Which is why the addition of Stalker is a very interesting one to me, because Stalker, to me, feels like a signing that Seoul added because they didn't want to lose him more than anything else. Stalker and Prophet are both very hyper flexible players. Stalker plays your Genji and your Pharah and your Tracer, and he even plays some Cassidy. And he also plays the Echo, which is where I think the main difference between Prophet and Stalker is. When Echo first came out, Prophet was pretty bad on the Echo. He definitely got a lot better over time. That was a major kind of criticism for Prophet back in 2020. Seoul was a really good team, but he didn't really look great on the Echo. Stalker is an Echo player. He does a much better job on Echo. And so I think that there's a definite benefit to adding Stalker when he can kind of play that role. And this also opens up more freedom for some of those kind of Tracer Genji compositions, if that's a big meta, or Tracer Echo compositions, stuff like that. Because you know Prophet's going to be your Tracer. He is one of the best in the league at the hero. You're not going to take him off of that. So Stalker and Profit together can kind of run a lot of different things. They have a lot of crossover, which is why I think it's very interesting that that is the lineup they've gone for. To me, it's very difficult to justify not playing Fitz, because Fitz has been so good on the hit scan roll over the past several seasons. I think he's one of those players who has been really, really good and hasn't gotten the credit for it until, kind of recently. He's always been very, very good. And when people think about kind of like the elite level hit scan players, they think of people like Lip. They think of people, like Kai, Ants, historically players like Birdring. But I actually think Fitz has been very, very good in that hit scan role. He's been one of the top hit scan players over the past several seasons. So I do think that this is a very, very good lineup with Fitz and Profit. And so Stalker's place in here, I think, is really only going to be in those kind of double, those Genji Tracer, Genji Echo type of compositions, or Tracer Echo compositions. And maybe they do just kind of like to roll with Stalker and Prophet a lot because they're both super flexible and it just opens up your ability to run a lot of different things. I think that is definitely the best part of this team. And I think it's the place where they're most likely to have the most success, because I think that this DPS lineup is very strong and very well-rounded and very diverse, which allows them to do a lot of really good things. So I'm excited to kind of see where this team goes with those players, because I think that they are some of the best pieces for this roster's success. And so I'm very excited to see what they do with these three as their primary kind of DPS lineup. It's one of the best rotations in the league, I think, assuming that they are able to actually utilize every single piece the way that they want to. So I'm intrigued by this roster. I'm excited by this roster of this DPS lineup. And I think that they're going to be one of the most exciting ones to watch going forward. Stalker brings some new energy to this team that I think they needed. They relied very heavily on Prophet and Fitz last season, who were both very, very good. But I think that when you had a player like Sabiolbi who doesn't have that kind of flexibility, doesn't really slot in super well, you're never going to really get playtime with him. Stalker, I think, will have more opportunity for playtime and could even bench Fitz for a lot of the season. So we'll see what happens there. I'm kind of intrigued to see it, but at this point, only time will tell. But let's move on to the support line. Creative returning as the flex support for this team, the primary flex support potentially for this team. I feel bad for Creative because obviously he joins this roster for the 2020 season and basically ends up splitting time with Badoshin for a lot of the season. And I'm pretty sure played less than Badoshin until the playoffs or Creative kind of took over and became the starter for the team. Then has, a 2021 where he looks pretty good. He's not amazing, but he looks pretty good. And now you have to be on the same team as Jonak, who is, one of the all-time greats when it comes to the flex support role. Obviously a 2018 star. He was the MVP in 2018 and the Overwatch World Cup MVP in 2018. So it's been a little while since those days, but I still think he has been a very strong player. He's been very, very good even since then. Double flex support seems to be pretty common. Seems to be something a lot of teams are opting to go for when building their rosters. We still see it a lot. It's been pretty popular. Obviously, you look at teams like New York, they have double flex support. Teams like the Gladiators have double flex support. So I think what we're looking at is the continued development of this kind of roster makeup of double flex support for the majority of these teams in the league. And I think Creative and Jonak do give you basically everything you're going to want. We know that Jonak's incredible on the Zenyatta. He's also really, really good on Ana. And I think that Creative and Jonak together, Jonak's definitely a stronger Zenyatta than his Ana. Creative, I think, is a better Ana than his Zen. So the two of them, I think, will work well together if double flex support is the primary meta. So I'm excited to see what they are able to do as a duo together, because I think it'll be interesting. But they also have a main support on the roster, which is Vindame. He is the former main support player for Team CC. The Seoul Dynasty are very, very big on bringing those players up. Or not Team CC, sorry. He was on Gen G, or some of the Gen G teams. He played on O2 Blast on loan. He's been with the Gen G organization for a while, so it's not surprising to me to see him kind of get brought up to the Overwatch League. They seem very, very content on bringing players from Gen G up. Stalker was on Gen G. So that's kind of what I look at with this team, is they like to bring a lot of these players from the Gen G organization up to their team. And he's going to be their main support player. He's going to be their Brig, their Lucio, their Mercy. That's going to be his primary thing. I'm curious to see who they opt to play as the primary flex support between Jonak and Creative. I would imagine that Jonak is a player who they probably had to spend a lot of money to sign. He's a big name player. He probably has a pretty big market value. I'd imagine that if you're the Seoul Dynasty and you're going to sign Jonak, your goal is to have Jonak be your primary flex support. It's not a guarantee. They could definitely opt to run Creative if they felt that he was the better option, but Jonak is that level of player where you just have to imagine that their goal is to have him be one of the primary players for this roster, and so I would expect Jonak to kind of be the starter. But I think a lot of the season we're going to see Creative and Jonak together. It'll be interesting to see what they do. I think that it's two really good flex support players. It's kind of a problem that if your problem is which of these two really good players do we play, you're in a pretty decent position. And I think Vindame will just be good to kind of fill in that main support role when they need it. But I think it'll mostly be Creative and Jonak playing throughout the season. Finally, the last player on this roster is Smurf, of course, formerly of the San Francisco Shock, two-time Overwatch League champion in 2019 and 2020. He brings a very diverse hero pool. He can play pretty much everything. We know he's one of the best Winstons in the league, but he also can play the Orisa and the Wrecking Ball and the Reinhardt. Even play some Roadhog as well. So he's a well-rounded player. He doesn't give you the Diva or the Zarya or the Sigma, so I would expect them to try to find another tank player, an off-tank player. I think Wan Su Min is kind of like the player that you could just kind of point to as well. He is on Gen G, so there's a very good chance that that's who they bring up. They seem to like to promote Gen G players, as I've mentioned, so possibility that that's who they bring up. The fact that they haven't brought him up yet makes me think that they probably want to look elsewhere first before they really kind of make that decision. But I am very interested in seeing what they do. We know Smurf's an incredible player. He's a very, very good and very talented player. And I think that we need to see if they opt to bring him up, because he is one of those players that I think would help round out this roster. Have a player paired with Smurf. There's a lot of off-tanks still on the market. A lot of teams only have one tank. Though, interestingly enough, some teams only have an off-tank, some teams only have a main tank. So some teams are still obviously making the decision what they want to do. But this is a roster I think is very, very good. And they really only need to fill in that one final tank role with a player. So keep your eyes on a Wan Su Min potentially being the player they bring up. Obviously, they had 2U last season, and they brought him up from Gen G, so very good possibility that that's what they decide to do. Again, is just bring up players from Gen G, or even possibly Tiger Nation, which is the other Gen G kind of like academy team. They do have another off-tank there, Chamge, so he could also be the player they bring up, or Chamke. That's always possibilities that they bring him up. who knows? But definitely look inside that organization for potential players to bring up. Tiger Nation is also where Polapo plays. Fun fact, who's to my knowledge, the only female player currently on a contenders team, or some type of like academy team, or even in Korean contenders. So good on her. Very proud of her. I know she's been some other teams in the past, so always good to see that happening, especially in Korea, where we see a lot of the talent from the Overwatch League come from. So it'll be hopefully the possible future for her in the Overwatch League, but who knows? A little too early to tell at this point in time. But I digress. This Seoul Dynasty roster is one of my favorites, I think, just in terms of what they've done. They look very, very good. They look like they have really genuinely put in a lot of work. And you look at their coaching staff, they obviously made some major changes to their coaching staff. Toby is another head coach, the former player for the Seoul Dynasty, played last year with the Philadelphia Fusion. He is now their head coach. They also brought in Wizard Young to be an assistant coach, or he's the head of strategy and data for this team. They also have MMA as an assistant coach who's been with the team for a long time. So they have a pretty solid coaching staff. They have people who've been around for a while. Some of these analysts and data analysts that have been around a while. Bong Wuri, Raccoon Panda, Dorong, as far as we know, are still involved with this team. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens, and if this team has some of these kind of resurgences based on what we kind of saw from them in the past, right? I think what this team needs is that we know that they're a team that has a bunch of players who are very smart and know how to play the game, right? Fitz and Prophet and Jonak and Smurf, these are guys who've been around the Overwatch League for a long time now. Creative's going into his third season. And yeah, you have two rookies in Stalker and Vindame, but the person who's being their head coach is Toby. And I don't think Toby's here to be the strategic guy. I think the strategy is going to be left to MMA. Wizard Young's going to be that kind of strategy and data. Like, those are the people I think are going to be left to do the strategy. Toby, I think, is there to be the kind of leader for the team. He's there to be the glue that keeps the team together, that kind of guides the vision for the team. And he is going to be the person who helps the team kind of stay focused, because we know that Toby is that level of player. He's a veteran. He was around for a really long time in the Overwatch scene. And I trust him to actually be a very successful head coach, because I think that he knows what teams need. He knows what type of leader to be. And I think that is something that he has going for him that I very much respect and appreciate. And so I do think Toby will be a fantastic head coach in this league. And I think he is a very good choice for this team as head coach, because he also just brings with him that just name value and that understanding that he's a very well-known piece and a very well-known player who brings a lot of good quality coaching and game knowledge to that team and to that role. And so I do think he's a very good head coach. I think he brings a lot to this team, and I think the team will be better this upcoming season, because I think that they have a much more solidified vision. I do think that they need an off-tank. I'm not going to judge them too harshly right now because they don't have one, because the season doesn't start for another couple of months. Definitely would not hurt to get one as soon as possible, but as long as you kind of focus on building compositions around Smurf primarily and kind of switching them out whenever you need to, I think this team will be in a good place. But to me, there's not really a weakest spot on this roster. You have a really good DPS core, a really good group of supports, and a really good solid main tank to lead your team. What I think we're going to see with this Seoul Dynasty team really is a very, very good performance. More consistency is what this team needs. I think with a change in the main tank role and some changes in the support role, I think this team has a much more solidified vision. A new coaching staff really helps kind of nail that in. And so they move on from Changun. He was there for such a long time. He was there in 2018. That's when he joined. And then he left in 2021, and they were good under him, but I think they needed a new direction. They needed someone to change the focus of this team, change the environment and culture and mentality of this team, and I do think that Toby's going to do a fantastic job at that. So I'm very excited for this team. I think they're very, very good. I think that they are a much better looking team this season than they were last season, and I'm incredibly excited to see them play in 2022. But let me know your thoughts on the Seoul Dynasty in the comments down below. Do you think the team looks a lot better? Do you think they look worse than they did? Do you think they look about the same as they were last season? I would love to hear from you in the comments down below. That's going to be all from me for today. If you enjoyed this video and want more like it in the future, consider liking and subscribing for more like it. Hope you're all staying safe and staying healthy. And until next time, bye-bye.